One cool thing about amateur radio is the experimentation aspect of things. You can continually build and build and build and come up with new concepts or work off of other concepts. And that is what I'm hoping to show you today as I showcase a project that I've been working on for many years, and some of you are familiar with it. And it started off as the Hamstick Commander.
The hamstick commander.
Yes, Sean. The hamstick commander.
Genius.
Today, we're going to take the Hamstick Commander concept and we're going to see if we can't make a fully portable DX Commander style multiband vertical antenna. But before we just go out in the field, I'd like to show you on the desk what we're working on. As we get started, let's take a look at these two plates right here. Now, these were the second iteration of the Hamstick Commander, and I brought these to Hambench in 2023 where I met up with Steve from Alpha Antennas. And he said, hey, that's pretty cool. He liked the concept, but he said, you know what I would do different? And I like the way he approached that. He didn't say, you know what you should do. He said, you know what I would do different? And he said, I would put 3/8 threaded inserts on each of these. That thought permeated in my head for a few years now. And Steve was right. So last week I went ahead and I've reiterated the Hamstick Commander plates, and I realized so much more about these. Now, not only are there 3/8 here, 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 and here, and I suppose I could do M10, but there also is a 3/8 here, 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 and here. Now, what does that do? Let me show you. The first plate, this is going to be our plate closest to the ground, and it's going to be for our radio wires. For right now, let's just go ahead and show how this is going to mount into the ground. If you're unfamiliar, and the beautiful thing about manufacturing and developing is things start to fit together. So I made this 3/8 inch stainless steel spike over the summer, and now you could actually put it right in the center of the plate. Now that's pretty cool. But if you needed more strength because you're going to have heavier antennas, remember you have 3/8 here, 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 and here. And do you see how there's enough room when it screws in that you could actually put a nut over the 3/8 24 spike? Which means not only could you put a spike on each corner so that when it goes in the ground, it's way more in the ground, but it also means that you could still put your radio connectors on each of those sections in between the nut and the 3/8 24 spike. But then you're thinking possibly, at least somebody was, well, how am I supposed to get all 5 spikes into the ground? And there is another concept you could use where maybe you have the 3/8 inch spike just in the middle, and after you get the 3/8 inch spike in the ground, you utilize 10 spikes on each of the corners, and that holds it into the ground even more. I want to make sure that I was clear with what I'm doing here. This radio plate has to have radio wires coming off of it, and even if you need to use these 4 connectors for the 10 spike or with a threaded insert spike, and for some reason you can't get radio wires on here, remember, we went ahead and we did 3/8 24 on these center holes as well. A lot of options to mount your radio wires. And like I said, in the future, I might even make an M10 plate because a lot of antennas now from overseas are M10 threaded. But check that out. The 3/8 24 fits just fine. And again, then we could take something like a ring connector, or if you had a 4 connector, and we could use those for our radios. Good to go. Let's focus on a few more key aspects of this. And of course, we're going to have the radio plate like we just spoke about, but then we also need to have a antenna or a radiating element plate, and it's going to sit on top of the radial element. But the problem is metal can't touch metal, otherwise we short the connections. So we have to have them separated, and it has to be separated by something that's non-conductive. Take, for example, these glass-filled nylon bolts, which I got in the size of M8. And the reason I initially And the reason I initially got these in M8 is so they fit on the back of my Ford Bronco, but that thing's been in the shop for a while now, and I might never see it again. But what we're going to do is we're going to take these glass-filled nylon bolts, which are non-conductive, and we're going to put them through the bottom radiating plate. Then we're going to take the 4 nuts and we're going to screw them all the way down so these bolts are tight on the radiating, or the radial element rather. Now we're out in the field and we're starting to set it up. We can't just put our radiating element plate or our top plate over these bolts because, well, it's not going to give us enough clearance. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a couple more nuts. And let's give them about 3 turns. 1, 2, 3. We want to try to get these nuts to be about even with each other, so that when the plate sits on top, it's not all crooked. Then we can put that plate on the top. And the thing is we're going to need to go down just a little bit more so we have enough clearance with these glass-filled nylon bolts to put one more nut on the top. Now, before we screw them down, another key aspect is going to be we have an SO239 connector. I got an elbow connector because it should fit within this 3/8 inch spot pretty well. Before we just put this in here though, we need to be able to separate our outer shield from our center conductor, or from our antenna section of the connector. And of course, before we do that, we're going to need to connect the radial plate to this bottom portion. And to do that, we'll get, again, a ring connector. We'll connect it with some 12 gauge wire and we'll jump it up, or rather down, to the radial plate itself. As you can see, the plastic will separate this connector from hitting the top antenna radiating elements. As you can see, there is a lot of inspiration not only from what Steve at Alpha Antennas had suggested to me, but also Kellum from the DEX Commander, his concepts and theories about how he makes his multi-band vertical antenna. And it's fun to be able to improve on those ideas. The nice thing is when you get this radial plate and radiating element plate, or the 2 plates together, you don't really ever have to take apart the glass-filled nylon because this is a unit you could just pull out of a bag and spike into the ground. Essentially, after you set it up the first time, there's no messing with all of these bolts again. Of course, if you're going to use that tent spike method like I mentioned, then there might be a necessity to take those glass-filled nylon bolts off. I think in hindsight, and the cool thing, by the way, about experimentation is you get to build things, you get to see them work, and then you get to see what could be improved on, or maybe even break things, then rebuild it again, break them a few more times until you find a solution that ultimately works for you. And so maybe when I made those plates, I should have had one of them be off a little bit, so the holes would still line up, but the little arms are off so that you could still put the tent spikes in without having to take apart the plates. And maybe that's a future iteration. So far to me, that looks pretty good. Obviously, there's a few more things I have to do, like I'm going to connect the radial plate to the connector. I'm going to put my connectors on for the radial wires. But then more importantly, I think that I might need to have some kind of spacer in here. Although the antennas seem to be fairly well separated now, as they go higher in height, the wind might take them and they might start to go any which direction, which would throw off the interaction that the antennas have with one another. All I really have to do is take the same plate here in a 3D print and put it over the 4 antennas to help keep them separated toward the top. It will look a little something like this. And if I could just take a moment to mention that what I'm showing you here isn't a build guide. It's not giving you step-by-step directions. You can go back and watch my prior videos to get the ideas of how this would be built. Or you could also utilize this as ideas that help you think upon what could be improved and how you can improve on it. So for example, this plate right now, it might not be fully correct because as we extend the antennas out, you're going to have a wider portion where the plate is going to meet the antenna for that section. And each section, again, is going to be a little bit different. So we might have to drill out holes or slightly adjust the plate in the future. But it's a critical concept that I think we're overlooking and kind of forgetting about within amateur radio, and that's the tinkering aspect of things, or rather the experimentation and tinkering. Hey, by the way, just because I show a way to do things doesn't mean it's the way to do things. Take, for example, my radials, which I showed off about 3 or 4 years ago using power pole connectors. Power pole connectors are very nice because if somebody runs through your radial field, it will disconnect the radials instead of maybe tear the antenna or pull the antenna over. So I like these rapid disconnect kind of power pole connector radial wires. However, other people might use something like alligator clips onto the radial plate, or I was considering maybe doing something where I have slots in the radial plates and the slots would allow for a tape measure to connect. That way you take the end of the tape measure, connect it, walk the tape measure out, and boom, instant radials. But I'm just trying to get you to think outside the box. Since I am promoting you to think outside the box, I also want you to consider that if you had this up in the air, say on a mast, it would have to be a very strong mast to support the weight. But all of a sudden, you could have yourself a multi-band dipole antenna if you put telescopic antennas on each end, or wires for the dipole in an inverted V shape. And this will be our rough draft, our final rough draft. This will be a completed assembly minus the antennas is what I'm saying. I would like to test our continuity just to make sure we have everything correct. We would hate to get out to the field and find out that somewhere there's a short and these ends both have continuity. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go center pin and just top plate. Continuity, that's good. Then I'm going to go outer shield to center pin. No continuity. No continuity, that's good. Then I'm going to go outer shield to bottom plate. Continuity, that's good. And of course, I think the problem I'm having here is my prong is not getting in deep enough. Yeah, that was the problem. So everything is functional at this point. In part 2, we're going to go out to the field. We're going to set this all up, see how quick it could be deployed, and we're going to see how well we can make contacts. But I think it's important that we recap where we are today. Number 1, over the years and years of making videos as well as experimenting, you take concepts and ideas such as the concept of the DX Commander or ideas from Steve at Alpha Antennas, and you start to improve on your thoughts and your processes. And you slowly see that no matter how many times people doubt you and how many times people tell you to do better, if you have it in you to do these things, you'll do them no matter what. And that's where we are with this. What started off as the hamstick commander slowly evolved into a no mast commander that used wires. And the concept was you would throw the wires over the trees. And now it's evolving even more. And that's the most important thing about experimentation and tinkering is your ability to continue knowledge every day, learning something new that you could put in your tool bag. And when you need to use it in the future, you'll have it in there. So thanks for watching part 1 of part 2. Let's go out to the field.